Yes, my name is Jonathan Buick. I'm the president and CEO of Idaho Champion. We have just acquired a large land package in the James Bay pursuing lithium, and we also have 4 cobalt properties in Idaho.
Jonathan, good to have you on the show. First time we've spoken or met, so I'm kind of keen to understand the story. And because you seem to be, you're certainly hitting all of the electric, battery, metal, commodity types in there. Almost got a trifecta going on. Can you just to kind of kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about you? What's your background? Where are you from?
Sure. So I'm Toronto-based. Background is corporate finance. Had my own advisory firm, broker-dealer called Harp Capital. I've raised over $400 million for junior mining companies, with about $100 million of that out of Korea and Japan, the big conglomerates. And within those transactions, 4 of those were actually battery metals projects that we were the advisor to. So certainly understand the end users and certainly where we want to direct and drive the company. So my background is capital markets.
Right. Okay. And I kind of want to talk about, what you've got into, because there's a lot of companies sort of jumping on the bandwagon because it feels like, the green thematic has really been sort of kicked on hard for the last couple of years, and companies are looking for those sorts of assets, making a reaction in the marketplace. So I'm keen to understand how you picked up these assets, and in fact, why did you pick up these assets?
Sure. I'll start first with our cobalt ground in Idaho. So we have 4 distinct cobalt properties right in the Idaho Cobalt Belt. Idaho is one of 3 places in the world where cobalt's the primary metal as opposed to a complementary metal. The other 2 places being Finland and Morocco. We've had those since our inception as a private company in 2016. We actually picked those up from a local family we've known for a long time. The lithium projects, we started the negotiation with different groups last spring, culminating in the first acquisition last fall for 161 square kilometers right along the Trans-Tega Road. Mid-January, we added 4 more acquisitions to consolidate and become contiguous. And then last Thursday, so the latter part of February, early March, we announced the final acquisition. We now control 415 square kilometers right in the James Bay Road, right through the property, and power lines as well.
Right. Okay. So having lots of assets in the portfolio, certainly of the right type, is good. But you actually got to do something with these things, and you got to finance that. So right now, you could argue they're a liability in a way. So how do you kind of create the value from each of these? I mean, what are you putting down as your flagship asset? What are you going to be focused on first?
Sure. I think as a part of the answer to that question, I should probably talk a little bit about the broader team.
Please do. Yeah.
In addition to the 4 battery metals projects I've been involved in an advisory role, we've got 3 other directors who have battery metals experience. As a team, we've created over $6 billion of value for the shareholders. So Paul Fornazzari, who has been with us since day one, he is a securities lawyer by trade, but an entrepreneur at the end of the day. He was a founder and director for Lithium Americas. He then subsequently left that board. And then became a founder and director for Lithium. Lithium last year was taken out for $940 million by a Chinese group. So 2 significant transactions, both to the benefit of the shareholder. Gabriel Pindar, who's our most recent appointee, has built 11 mines globally. He was the COO and director for Lithium. So again, another major transaction and win for the shareholder. And then finally, I'd highlight Patrick Highsmith, who's the technical director. He's American. He and I first met in the late 2000s. He was the CEO and director for Lithium One, not the new Lithium One, but the original Lithium One. He actually hired Harp Capital, my advisory firm, back in 2010 to seek a partner, and we were successful in bringing in a Korean consortium of LG, GS Caltex, and Crux for $15 million into the Sal de Vida project in Argentina. And about 15 months later, Galaxy Minerals took them over for $125 million US. So multiple transactions. As a team, we've done 7 battery metals transactions, again, for the benefit of the shareholder. And you're going to hear that a lot from me today, Matthew. It is about the shareholder. We believe Idaho Champion's number 8.
Right. Okay. So you've got the team who kind of been there before and got the T-shirt for which is great. So what's the plan with your lithium pegmatite project?
So when we were looking for an acquisition, with infrastructure matters. So certainly the Trans-Tega Road having access. I mean, we're in remote James Bay. Why would there be a 12-month road in the middle of nowhere? If you look about 35 kilometers west of our property, you actually have Hydro-Quebec's largest power dam. That road services that power dam. About 15 kilometers east of our property is an airport and base camp called Mirage. That base camp services the dam. That's why it's probably the best kept road in rural Quebec. That mattered to us as a company. And then also having 2 power lines running from the dam back to the airport, that's 3.6 cents a kilowatt of green energy. So for those that are looking for that ESG checkbox, that checks that box too. But the reality is, conceptually, we've secured a fantastic patch of ground. It's time to go out and drill this. And so we're going to approach this aggressively, but still conservatively. I haven't highlighted yet some of the neighbors in the area and why we're excited about what our geology holds. But certainly we are adjacent to and contiguous to Patriot Battery Metals in the Corbett discovery. Also on the western flank of our property, we have Winsome Resources in the Kansas. So we've got two of the better discoveries, and certainly with Patriot, probably the best discovery in North America in the last 15 years. We have not had any drilling done on our ground, but we do know from historic reports, both from some of the companies we've bought from, but also the Quebec government, that we have pegmatites on the ground, and the multi-million-dollar for us is, are they going to host spodumene? And we're going to pursue that answer, and we expect to make that discovery of magnitude this year.
Right, and tell me a little bit about the transaction. I mean, what did it cost you, and what did you inherit in terms of data? What do you know about it?
Sure. So we did, I think at the end of the day, we ended up with 7 different vendors, one of which was a public company. Similar types of transactions across the board. Typical junior transaction, a little bit of cash, a block of stock, half of that stock held for 18 months, and then a royalty that's at 2% with a 1% buy down. Standard industry started structures for juniors. Total cash consideration, I think, was $190,000 and 21.5 million shares. And at the time of negotiating, we would have been in sort of 5-cent range. So all in, roughly $1 million equivalent. We think it's been a major transformational transaction for us as a company. A part of the appeal for us when we were negotiating was the team that we brought and seeing the pedigree of our board. Certainly, as Patriot's share price has gone up, so has the ask of the vendor. I would say a lot of them are basically Looney Tune characters from Warner Brothers right now with what their ask is. They're in the ether, and we're not prepared to pay those prices.
Well, it's a funny time for lithium. It's going to come off from the October highs for sure, and probably a little bit more to go. So potentially it could become a better time for acquisition of lithium assets, I think in the near term. But I think you'll want to drag me back to what the future holds for lithium prices, I suspect. But I'm sort of intrigued about how much more you think you need to kind of pick up. Have you got a good enough asset which will stand on its own? And so coming back to the question of what do you actually know about the asset in terms of that data set?
So the original land package of 161 square kilometers was purchased from a Quebec junior gold company that has this as a part of their inventory. They had a primary gold project that they've made a discovery and brought a major in on, so this was just sitting there. I approached a couple of the directors I've known for about 15 years and said, listen, you're not doing anything with this. Would you be interested in monetizing that? So that conversation started last spring, and we culminated that in September. Between signing the LOI and the actual closing of the purchase, we were able to secure a helicopter, and we did an airborne program flying LiDAR and AirMag. We also had historic reports. This is a greenstone belt. They actually had this ground for copper and gold. They hadn't documented in their mapping in the field the pegmatites that they walked across as they were sampling the gold and copper greenstone belt. Never touched the lithium, the pegmatites in their approach. They walked and mapped them, but did not sample them. And I think that's why they were available for us, and that's why we secured them.
Right. Okay. So what I'm trying to get at, Jonathan, is trying to understand why you would pick this up. Okay, because a nearology or a closeology play is fine, but why would you go and put a deal like this together? You must have a little bit more than hope that it kind of is like what the guys next door have. Was there any actual data points to suggest that these pegmatites might actually give up decent grades or at least scale?
Great question. The answer to that is there's a number of geologic reports by the Quebec government. We also had some regional reports by other prospectors that document the number of pegmatites across the ground that we were looking at. There was no direct sampling, so we weren't going based on some lithium hits. We did have, in a couple of Quebec government reports, lithium occurrences documented on our ground. And by a couple, I mean a lot. But a lithium occurrence is not the same thing as a lithium discovery. So we have our work to do without even the acquisition as recently as a week ago. This is hot off the presses transactions. We've mobilized a team for the spring. We're going to have a 20-man camp. We are going to be going right across from left to right or from west to east, sampling and mapping the entirety of the project. The Quebec government has told us that we expect it for a critical metals project. We expect a drill permit in a 60-day turnaround. So we expect getting the data back from that sampling program in June, July to have a permit in hand by Labor Day, and having that field program with the drill bit turning as the snow starts to fly this fall.
Right. Okay. And so with people like Gabriel, Paul, and Patrick, obviously, really good in terms of the board construct, but in terms of like the day-to-day operational component, what's their experience in terms of how you go about building this thing up, and how does that kind of feed into the system, the process that you're going to be, delivering yourselves on the ground? Because, sometimes there's a kind of nameplate names, and then there's people actually say, look, here's the smart way of going about building up a business, from a low start.
Another great question. I will say that our board is very hands-on, very active. I talk to Patrick and Paul daily, multiple times a day, with depending on where we are in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. Gabrielle led the technical efforts at Lithium and was one responsible for delivering that bankable feasibility study. And the Chinese actually are, in fact, building out based on that feasibility study that Gabrielle was responsible for. So we have a hands-on team. I think another thing that has motivated us as a team is we have real skin in the game. As a company, our shareholders are our partners. Gabriel wrote a 7-figure check coming in because he believes in the geology. We have over $6 million ourselves. So we're aligned with the shareholder. But we also have the relationships in the industry to actually deliver the groups, whether it's the geologists in the field or the drill companies, access to the labs, access to the technical people to complement our skill sets. So I think the track record of success has allowed us to be attractive to talent. And I think that's going to help us in the days ahead.
Brilliant. And do you think there's a difference between sort of, lithium brine type companies and, hard rock type companies, or is there a lot of kind of crossover in terms of, again, that experience in terms of how do you build this thing up and build that kind of, ability to kind of almost predict the future in terms of what that path looks like?
Sure. Very, very different skill sets on a pegmatite versus a brine. Certainly, the history of our board has been in the brines, but also with Gabrielle and Patrick been involved in hard rock mining and a number of successes with hard rock miners. There is a strong alignment with the board level, but certainly as a team, those are going to be decisions that will be made as we need to make the discovery, but certainly as we advance the asset, we know that we can call in the various third-party consultants and engineering firms to help manage that process in an effective way.
Right, and just sticking with the lithium for a little bit longer, if you don't mind. Right, you obviously raised a little bit of money at the end of did you close that raise?
So the raise we announced with the appointment of Gabrielle, we actually closed it. It was effectively a closed financing when we announced it. That was
okay.
We've been speaking
end of the year
and going back and forth, and he sort of outlined a few things he wanted to see done, including making it a contiguous land package. So we went out and were able to secure that, and certainly guided by our geologists as to, you need to go get more ground, Jonathan, go get it. I did that. But that financing closed the day it was announced. So that money's in the treasury already.
Okay, fantastic. So which kind of, given what you're trying to do in terms of you're spending a lot of time on the kind of the corporate, the administrative side of things, like getting up these packages to get the lab packages together. You're now going to have to think about, right, we now need to go and do something. So we're going to need to finance that. And have you actually announced, or are you able to sort of articulate the process going forward, just sticking with the lithium in terms of how you allocate capital and what you're going to do?
So cash on hand right now is about $2.3 million. We have warrants at various strike prices. Management owns roughly 30% of those. We have roughly $15 million available in warrant money. Our shareholders actually have been quite good to us. We have about a dozen phone calls. I can reach 85% of my shareholder. All of them have made money with us on previous deals. So getting a second check from somebody who you've made money for is easier than finding the first check from a new investor. So I think we can call those. We have call functions as well in those warrants. So certainly the ability to have that money come in, and we've already seen the first threshold of warrants was at 10 cents. We're already seeing warrants being exercised. So that money reduces the burden or the pressure on me. I mean, as the CEO, my responsibility is to raise the money. And as soon as we close the financing, I'm already worried about the next one. So if I can start to see a self-funding mechanism for the warrants, gives us a little runway. The programs in the spring are already funded based on what we have in the treasury. As we look to seek the drill permit and to be drilling in the fall, we'll either have seen enough warrants exercised, or we'll strategically go after capital. We have the benefit in being in Quebec doing what they refer to as a charitable flow through. There's one of those groups that we're in dialogue with. They've offered us 100% premium to any financing, to any amount of money. Now, we're only going to take what we need and do it in tranches because, again, we're shareholders. We don't want to dilute unnecessarily. But there is access to capital every cycle within the calendar year or even within the metal. There's different windows to finance. We know there is one here right now, but it would have to be on pretty robust terms for us to consider it.
Right. Okay. And then with regards to, you can tell you're a finance guy because that's the lane you're staying in. What are you going to do with that money once it kind of comes through?
I've done this for 30 years. I could talk enough rock to be dangerous, but I'm going to stick to my knitting.
Yeah, that's true. Talk about what you know, invest in what you know. But on a certain thing, so in terms of the plan, now I get that it's kind of fairly early stage at this point, and maybe planning is not possible. It's a case of one step forward at a time. But what can you tell us about what 2023 looks like on the lithium in terms of work on the ground?
We already have a plan, and we're not afraid to share what our plan is. And you'll even see within our presentation on our website and certainly the materials we've used it in meetings, we outline a slide. It's called milestones. It's basically news events that investors can track and follow. Good, bad, and different. What does that mean for you as an investor? We outline some of the things that people can expect in the coming weeks. We're going to have a field program in the spring. That's going to be a sampling and mapping program. That's going to lead to a drill program in the fall. We will fly more airborne and doing air mag and LiDAR. We'll probably do some gravity. We've certainly seen to our neighbor at Winsome, gravity has been an amazing tool for them. It's a tool that people haven't typically thought of for the pegmatites. First time I've ever seen people going for underground pegmatites. Usually it's an open pit situation, but certainly some of the uses of the gravity are allowing people to have the ability to see pegmatites undercover. And I went and heard a paper presented during the PDAC on that subject matter, and I think that's going to be a tool that we'll add to our toolbox. We're seeing a lot of the approaches out of Australia now coming into the James Bay. Obviously, the Pilbara is a more advanced, more mature pegmatite region, and it's important for us to take notice of what has worked successfully for them. Obviously, different terrain and different geographic and geologic setting, but the pegmatite to pegmatite, it's a matter of how are you working to gain knowledge on that. So we're going to continue to seek and understand whether the Aussie approach has been as well.
Yeah, well, it's been big in Australia for the last couple of years. Some of the biggest gains have been in that area, and I think I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon without necessarily knowing too much about lithium. Idaho Cobalt, obviously, good gestation. We've swung a few companies with Cobalt projects in Idaho. Where does that sit in the list of things to do?
So, as a pre-discovery company, it makes sense for a company such as Idaho Champion to have a lithium package and a cobalt package. Our expectations with discovery. And we're looking to drill both in Quebec and in Idaho this year. With discovery, we would then consider splitting out and creating a second company, giving our shareholders a second lottery ticket. This is a challenge for everybody. It's a different skill set, and we're smart enough to know that. And so our expectation in Idaho is that we will be pursuing a discovery there. We have the Twin Peaks mine, which is a past-producing mine. It produced from 1924 to 28 for precious metals. In the 30s, it produced again from 34 to 38. For the base metals, it was all shipped up to the Silver Valley. They don't ship rock, they ship ore. So we know that was good grade. They have about 330 meters of underground portals at the project. None of them are open, although I sort of poked my head in last spring just to make sure it wasn't open and it took a look about. We were doing a field program there last fall to lead to a drill program this year, and we actually discovered a new copper vein system at surface. We're directly east and adjacent to what is now Electro Battery Metals, formerly First Cobalt, at the Iron Creek. The Iron Creek is a past-producing mine. It was one project company called U.S. Cobalt that First Cobalt took over in 2018 for $180 million U.S. Idaho Geologic Survey flew the whole county last year, so that saved us about $250,000. But what we saw from that desktop study is the geologic structure that is Iron Creek, and now last August, Electro Battery Metals announced a new discovery called the Ruby Zone. The geologic structure of Iron Creek and Ruby are what actually leads right into the copper vein system we've discovered at surface. So in terms of, again, news for the investor audience that's going to pay attention to us, we've got 19 samples in the lab there from that sampling program that we expect. I was hoping to have by PDAC, but obviously we haven't got it yet, but that's news on the come as well.
Okay. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out, because obviously I say it's in a way uncorrelated. I get the battery thematic, but it's a different jurisdiction and different skill sets required. Okay, we'll watch that. Let's see what you guys do next. One of the things you did mention in some of the marketing material was, in terms of next steps, was around signing a definitive agreement with an Asian group, presumably Japanese, Korean, or otherwise. A bit early stage to be talking that game, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the market has started to pay attention to us since we've made the announcements of the lithium. But an anecdote that I've used with some of my shareholders, and I'll share it with you, Matthew, is for the last 4 years, we've run a 100-meter race on an 80-meter track, and we keep hitting the brick wall before the finish line. That's been this market as a junior. And so in November of 21, I started getting inbound calls from Aussie listed, trying to figure out how they could steal our cobalt from us. And my benefit of having worked in Korea and Japan for a long time and having handed my advisory service business to my partner, who's a Korean metallurgical engineer, due to COVID, he actually has remained in Seoul since September 2019 with 2 trips at home, one for his daughter's wedding. I phoned him up and said, listen, I'm getting inundated by Aussies trying to figure out how they can steal this. Is there an audience in Korea right now for this? And he said, yes, there is. Don't sell it. So we started to open up conversations with groups I've worked in Korea and Japan for 22 years of my career, knowing sort of who the people were and what they would be looking for. Started that conversation in April of last year. We announced a non-binding MOU with one of the battery groups. We didn't disclose who it was because it was non-binding. We did a site visit to the project in May. We were fortunate enough. I was able to get Jervois to let us go underground at their new operations, which announced production in October. That's the only producing cobalt mine in North America, and it's our neighbor at the Victory Project. So I took the group underground, and we were standing there at the portal, and I said, listen, here, I know you look for bankable feasibility stage assets, and we're 100% risk. But here's why you need to pay attention. The ground that Jervois has built this mine is the same ground as ours. It's not private land. It's not patent land. It's public land. And they've shown us how to get to a permit. You make a discovery, you do the environmental work, you drill it out, you do the engineering work, and if the economics are there, you can get a permit. And the reason I know that is Jervois has just showed us that template. That message wasn't lost in the battery group. They went home. They started to do their due diligence. We've advanced that conversation. I told them in mid-January, I know the priority for you is now negotiating offtake on a couple of projects because the IRA has got them spooked where they're going to source their metals in free trade agreement countries. So we're no longer on the front burner. And I've told them that you're going to miss the window here. So we're seeking to get that to a definitive where they're going to spend as a junior company. I mean, forget the lithium for a minute. As a junior company, raising money in Canadian dollars and spending in the U.S., we're getting punished by the FX rate away. So if I can bring in a group that's going to spend U.S. dollars, and now we've got the benefit of being able to raise premium dollars in Quebec, that manages my treasury that much stronger. I can now raise money at a premium to spend in Canada and hopefully have them spend U.S. dollars in America. But right now, I don't feel like we have the same need for that conversation to complete for definitive to be signed. And that's not arrogance. That's just where the market dynamic has changed. I don't know if it's or not, but.
Well, it sort of does. Well, obviously, we know Bryce Crocker really, really well, but he's been coming on the show for the last 3 years. And we've seen them kind of build up their Idaho project, and obviously, and elsewhere down Brazil as well. Here's the thing that I'm trying to understand looking in. So I'm hearing a good game, good chat, right? The right people with big ideas, with with the right commodities, and I'm looking at share price from this time of year 2020, so three years in the making, and the chart's been difficult, right? It's a difficult chart to look at. Do you think that's been because you've been through a phase of just kind of trying to work out what you've got or trying to get the right assets into the portfolio, and a little bit of, well, the market needed to help and really didn't in 2022 for anyone. Do you think you're now at that point where you're looking for that kind of that step change, or you're going to be able to deliver that kind of step change again? And if so, do you feel that the message is simple enough for people to understand what it is that you're trying to do?
I think at the end of the day, this is a people business. And I come at this first as an investor, and our team does as well because we are investors. And when you look at people, good people can use mediocre assets as currency to go seek better assets. mediocre people will ruin the best assets in the world. We think we just made that pivot. Now, our company name is Idaho Champion. We're no longer Idaho-centric. We've now picked up assets in Quebec. So as a part of the pivot and the rebrand to the battery metals, where we have a tremendous amount of experience and scar tissue to show for it, we will be seeking a name change and taking that to the shareholder. We think it's important as a part of the pivot to also have a rebrand. I love the name. I love our logo. But at the end of the day, we can't have Idaho be the only part when we have a Quebec. So we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. We're in, to use a sports analogy, we're in the early innings of what's happening in the battery metals. It's going to be a slant curve. Lithium price is going to soften. Cobalt price already has. It's going to come back. There's going to be an ebb and flow. And if you have a team that's capable that can raise the capital to see you through the difficult times. As a shareholder at NEO, I saw them take a big chunk of change when nobody was ready to give money. They took enough money that when the lithium market softened, they had enough money in the bank. They went through and delivered a bankable feasibility study while a lot of people lost their value. That's what allowed them to get taken out when everybody else was just starting to get air back in their lungs. They survived and thrived. And so we think we can do a similar set of events now. We have the right team in place. And we have now a portfolio of assets that we believe wealth can be created. We're not here for 10%. We're here for 10x. And we think 2023 delivers that for us.
Well, like I say, I think that's why I asked that question. It may seem sort of a difficult or even rude question to ask, but it's for people who've been in this story for 3 years, they're going to have a different view. But if you're coming in from now, I suspect that kind of low base and with and potential high leverage, it could become very, very interesting. But therein lies the kind of potential difficulty. You said you can reach 85% of the register with very few phone calls, right? Will people stay with you on this ride? Or do you think there's a kind of overhang component to the story which you sort of need to also deal with? You're a finance guy, which you at some point, do you think there's an overhang which you'll need to deal with in the future? And if so, how do you come out that?
I've been fortunate that the guys who wrote the early checks also have average cost base, so they're in good position. Now, will they take a profit? I'm sure the people exercising warrants right now is found money. And if they're taking a profit, they'll write a check the next time because I made them money. But the reality is, the last 3 years of looking at that chart, I had to live it every day. And it's about being available and accountable. And so my promise to everybody I talk to is, I can't promise you discovery, although I think we're going to deliver too. What I can promise you is availability and accountability. My commitment to a shareholder is, I know when I have a liquidity event in my life, the stock I sell is the one I know least about. My commitments, Idaho Champion will never be the least about. If you look at the presentation, that's got my mobile number. It's got, this matters to us. It should matter to the investor, and they should know it matters to us.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the candor and the honesty here. And there's a lot to like about this story for sure. And I think if this is the moment that it upticks in terms of what you're able to do, the assets that you've now got, and I say whatever the market does for lithium, and whatever you do with the Cobalt asset. Exciting times. So I appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about it, Jonathan. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Matthew, and look forward to coming back and giving an update. We've got a lot of progress, a lot of catalysts to come, and I think your viewership will want to follow the story. So thank you.